Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of VCTV. I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott. We've got a fun episode for you again here on VCTV. We're going to be speaking today about business inclusion in investing and fundraising, really getting down into the nitty gritty about investing and fundraising on a global scale for everybody and anybody, and how this landscape has really evolved over the last few years, opening the paths to investing and fundraising for any company in so many different ways. And we're going to share what some of those are today, so that no matter where you are or what type of company this may be that you're building, as your first, second, or your 100th, there's an opportunity for you to raise capital in some way, shape, or form. But before we get started, make sure you share, like, and also check out the archive for today's episode to hear from today's speakers and all speakers of the VCTV family on LATOKEN.com. A big shout out to the LATOKEN team and to Maria for making today's episode possible. Let's jump right in and introduce today's guest. First and foremost, Gary Fowler, welcome back to the show. A little introduction and background for everybody.
Yeah, it's great to be here and great to see you again, Kyle, for the second time today. My name's Gary Fowler. I'm a serial entrepreneur and investor. I've done 17 companies. I was on the original management team at Click Software, sold to Salesforce for $1.35 billion a little over 2 years ago. Also the co-founder of Viva.ai, one of the top AI HR tech companies that I founded 5 years ago. Actually, almost to date, 5 years ago, actually. And I am the CEO, president, and co-founder of GSD, Next Gen Venture Studios, premier AI and quantum venture studio located in Santa Clara, California. And we help companies go global using Silicon Valley as support for the rest of the world by taking operational roles in those companies. Great to be here today.
Wonderful. Thank you, Gary. David, welcome to the show. A little introduction on yourself and also your company, and welcome to the show.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. My name is David Schachter. Before becoming an entrepreneur, I was an athlete. I was a 4-time national boxing champion and competed in Muay Thai internationally. I moved to Israel and started working. I did my master's and then started working in online day trading. This is like before Robinhood era. And since then, built a e-commerce platform for the cannabis industry.
Wonderful. Welcome back to the show. It's always a pleasure. Jose, welcome back to the show as well. A little intro, a little background for everybody.
Hi, Kyle. Happy to be back again once more. So my name is Jose Graza. Basically, I'm the founder and CEO today of the BizMoney Corp. I would say the only 100% business inclusion company today on the globe. I sold all my investments an X amount of years ago just to focus on this topic of business inclusion. And we focus essentially on the first stage. That means that whenever you have no idea, up to the moment that you become a revenue generator, and then basically we give you out to the community that picks you out and trades you forward into this fundraising process.
Wonderful. Last but not least, Brett, apologies. Welcome back to the show. A little introduction and background.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Brett Noyce, currently with Davis Reed Advisory. In our current projects, we're currently advising a couple of family offices on an early stage investments, as well as helping to set up a cross-border investment fund that's focused on investing in companies, bringing them public on the Japanese stock market. Previous work included building investor syndicates and incubator programs in Silicon Valley.
Wonderful. Welcome, everybody. Let's dive right into today's topic, focused around, again, business inclusion and investing and fundraising. Jose, you are a big proponent of this topic, so I'm going to have you kick it off for us. Of course, what does this all mean now in 2021 as we look at the opportunities and the landscape of investing and fundraising, how it has evolved so much over the last decade, and specifically over the last year? More opportunities, more investors looking globally. Tell us a little bit from your viewpoint what this all means for today.
So the investment community has been growing steadily, also has become much more sophisticated, and the volumes and the amounts or the tickets that they invest have become bigger. But there's also have been a trend from let's say, high-risk investments up to more comfortable investments. I would say typically after seed stage, a round and upwards into this whole process. So that means that the amount of money that is available today for the companies that are in seed stage or even pre-seed, or people that have, because that happens a lot, that have no idea at all, but they have an ambition to become an entrepreneur, that's basically dried out. So we decided to do something about it. I myself, I don't come from a wealthy family. I just come from a working class family. There was no business tradition at all, so we know exactly what it means. But in the same way that I started and became an entrepreneur, you have millions of people today, every year, that want to start and become an entrepreneur. But the problem is that they lack of two main ingredients. One is, in essence, the knowledge, and the second is the resources. So those resources are on the market, but it's very hard to get to them. And the knowledge, there are no business universities. You have obviously boot camps and accelerators, but they are not mass oriented. They are like more focused on a specific niche or in a certain region. So it really doesn't solve the problem of the millions of people that we have out there to get into this environment. But things are changing. So the good thing is that things are changing, and we are just the pioneers in this area that kicked off initially with a mass program, the mass training program that we are going to bring to the market. We've been working on this now for more than 1.5 years. And also the environment that is needed to be able to deliver to these individuals so that they can get free cash flows very fast as they lack resources. So this is more or less in a nutshell what is going on.
Thank you very much, Jose. And as you mentioned, things are changing. David, I want to come to you. I mean, you and your company went through a crowdfunding experience. Share a little bit about that with us if you can, both as the founder and then also having been on the side of managing those investors and what that's been like for you and your company.
Sure, yeah. Crowdfunding is awesome if you get the opportunity to do it. There's a few platforms: Republic, WeFunder, Seed Invest, Our Crowd. We're with Microventures. I believe only 5% of the people that apply to Microventures get accepted. Our deck was, we had to put that together. Then we had to get all of our financials together, and we really had to come with a presented. A lot of people have asked me, hey, can you introduce me to the startup? I'm like, you guys, like, they won't accept you. I know they won't. You don't have your ducks in a row. So the crowdfunding is really interesting because it goes through the SEC. With the Reg CF, you can raise up to 1.1 million. And it comes from non-accredited investors. So you're reaching out to people at $100, $200 minimums as a chance to join as an equity partner. You know, you have Kickstarter where you put in money and it helps a project get going. And then GoFundMe is, you know, sending David to Europe on study abroad or something. But this is a chance for people to invest in your company. So it's a really interesting concept. Our cap table had 400 plus people. It's not. It's all under Microventures. So there's me, the other co-founders, our advisor. These people are on our cap table. And then there's one line that says Microventures, which they took care of all the paperwork, essentially, with helping all the non-accredited investors. So it's a really interesting concept. It's only been around for a few years. It's growing. The rules are changing as it's advancing, but it's becoming definitely more and more popular. And it was one of the only options we had as a small startup.
That's a good point. I mean, even the regulations have changed as well, right? So you can go, companies now with Reg CF has changed where companies can raise, instead of 1 million or just over 1 million, to now around $5 million from non-accredited investors as well here in the United States. But Gary, I want to come to you. I mean, you're investing in companies everywhere. I mean, you are a prime example, if I may, of today's topic. I mean, you once invested in a very localized way, and not to put words in your mouth, but you did invest very locally, and now you're investing globally everywhere. I mean, you're doing deals left, right, and all these different countries and all these different industries that prior to 2020, you might not have. What has this all looked like? What has this all meant for you as an investor now here in 2021 more than ever?
It means there are a lot more opportunities everywhere. That's what it means, Kyle. It's remember, intellectual capacity is evenly spread around the world, but opportunities aren't. So we're spending a lot of time in Africa. I mean, we're spending time all over, Indonesia, et cetera. But what's happening, which is really eye-opening, is because there's an incredible amount of talent that's untapped. And if you look at our recent trip to Nigeria, we attended their AI Saturdays. I mean, there are incredible companies. They've had a couple of recent unicorns. And so what we want to do is mine those. I got to tell you, years ago, when we had brought Click Software, which is IET, I was on the original team from Israel to the U.S. There weren't a lot of Israeli companies in the U.S. at the time. And I got hired by Oak Investment Partners, came on board with the company as a senior vice president in Campbell, California. But at the time, there weren't a lot of Israeli companies. Look at it now. It's a startup nation. Same thing with Russia, Ukraine, Belarus. Incredible talent, incredible minds, incredible capabilities. And so it's the same kind of logic. The difference that we have now is we have things like StreamYard. We have Zoom. We can do deals. You just have to feel a bit more comfortable than we did before. Because if you remember, Kyle, a year and a half ago is, hey, let's get together. And you and I, we've talked about it here on the show several times. But I used to go down to Hobie's on El Camino Real, and that's where you would meet with the investors. That's where you would meet with partners. And we would go to lunch or breakfast, and we would never dinner, lunch or breakfast, and we would talk about the opportunity. And that's how deals were done. And if it was a bigger deal, you'd go to the steakhouse on El Camino Real, the Sundance Mining Company. So what's happened is now, because of the pandemic, we've been forced to do things differently. And quite frankly, we're really connected. So, Zoom has gone from 30 million active users pre-pandemic to over 400 million today. And I mean, it's incredible. I remember there were thousands back when I first got started with Zoom 5 years ago. So it's incredible how times have changed. And in order to keep up with this digital transformation, you need to invest, you need to be aggressive. And as we talked about, you need to develop, the companies need to make sure they're highlighted. It's like it's marketing or merchandise planning. In terms of a retailer, you got to make sure that your presence out there and people know where they can find you. Got to make it easy for them.
Absolutely. Got to make it easy for them. And Brett, I want to come to you next. I mean, you're investing again in several areas, but fintech has taken off as a primary industry for you. How does this look here in 2021 as you look at business inclusion and also financial inclusion, and how fintech itself has evolved, whether it be from the investment side to the industry side?
Yeah, a lot to kind of unpack there, but fintech, as I've said before, many times on this show, I feel like is really matured. It's come to the point where it's went from the really highly disruptive to now it's a baseline. It's kind of a piece of stack. So it's really to the point where it's kind of trickling into everything, right? Payments is part of everything, making a better customer experience, whether you're a bank or e-commerce or even an offline company. So I think I feel that it's just trickled into everything. I think from an investment standpoint, it makes it more difficult to find like big breakout opportunities. And I think the big breakout opportunities continue to be, in our thesis has always really been about the global opportunities. We have a very established, and even though we don't feel it on a day-to-day, like we have a pretty good financial system or a great financial system comparatively. So I feel like the big opportunities in fintech are to really apply the technology and the leaps that we've made in the last 5 years and apply them to different emerging markets.
Thank you very much, Brett. And I'd like to come to each of you around industry. So as we talk more about business inclusion and different industries around the world, where are you seeing some of the most focus right now when it comes to industries that are looking to do fundraising? that maybe have more access than ever. And Jose, I want to start with you. What industries can you call out, if any, that are really seeing a moment around business inclusion, seeing more efforts, seeing more focus, either from the investment side or the building side?
I think we need to have some kind of a mind shift. It's not about the verticals or the areas, it's about the individual. And until we don't understand that everything is about the individual, then we're not able to move forward. So the individual has a need, right? And we know that by statistic and research that every 20% on global population basically has a need to do some kind of a business. It can either be production, can be service, can be anywhere. And what we need to understand is that of those 20%, 50%, which is 10% of global population, will never be able to get to fulfill that dream, not even kick off, because they simply don't have a way to get out of the cycle that we have today, that we are teaching on the universities, basically people to take a job, right? So, and nothing against the job, or job is not bad, but in essence, you are not moving them on to what they, in essence, would aim to, which would be like building any type of business. Can be a bakery, can be a production company, can be even a shoe manufacturer, whatever it is, right? So this is the basic problem that we face today. And I always say the following: look, everybody is out there to look for unicorns and invest in unicorns, right? We are out there to make unicorns. So we are much prior to they become a unicorn. And in fact, the investment community doesn't know who is going to become a unicorn until they are getting to become a unicorn. And this is the challenge. So what we have tried to do is try to explain that you need to put grain in the floor or in the ground, right, to be able to have this plant and harvest later on, and not taking the harvest at the end of the cycle. So we focus on the beginning, and in that beginning, we feel that there's so much and endless opportunities in every sector. Okay, there is no sector which is agnostic to business inclusion.
Well, and you're right about the unicorn spot too. I mean, it takes time to build a company that can be a multi-billion-dollar company as well. It's hard to be able to pick that out on day one. To your point, Jose. And David, I want to come to you next around cannabis. I mean, cannabis has been a very interesting industry for many years. A lot of investors have stayed away from it, but recently gotten into it. There's been more evolution of the landscape and of the industry over the past few years than ever before. It's now becoming more acceptable as an, if possible, investment and for founders to build in. What do you see happening next for the industry, for those that are looking to get in, and how impactful it could be to them and their lives and business potential? What do you see next happening in the cannabis sector?
Legalization is the main. I mean, New York just legalized recreational cannabis, and what will that do for a federal concept? Canada has federal cannabis, so Mexico just legalized. The U.S., it's going to be a little different. I think it's going to stay a states' rights thing. But what you have to realize with all the investment companies from Canada, when they legalized federally a few years ago, they were allowed to talk about banking. In Canada, you can have a cannabis company and have a bank. So all these Canadian companies started buying property in Africa, in Asia, all over the US. In Las Vegas, a lot of the companies are actually Canadian owned. And the reason is because they were allowed to go on the Canadian stock market because they were fully federally legalized, and the US waited so long. And so now Mexico is about to do this whole push, and what that's going to be a giant recreational market. It's very much an excluded business. The regulation, the licensing to get into cannabis is very difficult. There's all these inclusion minority programs. A big part of why we switched to CBD is because it doesn't have the regulatory laws that the THC dispensaries have. Hopefully when things change, our platform will be able, there's all kinds of cannabinoids in a cannabis. There's THC, CBD, CBN, CBD, all these chemicals are part of the hemp cannabis plant. But the financing that's come from Canada is because the country allowed for federal legalization, which opened up the banking, which opened up public companies. So you can invest in a Canadian company, which now owns a Las Vegas dispensary and a farm in Africa. In the US, that wasn't allowed. Chicago's making a big push. There's really a bunch of big companies from Illinois. Florida has a weird regulatory law. California is so behind on trying to do these inclusion programs. I mean, it's still a mess. It's become a lot better, and the tech companies are now like coming in, and it's making it a lot more, it's cleaner. Peter Thiel was a big investor, and then once he came in, that kind of just opened it up for the rest of the large investors a few years ago.
And David, we have a question for you from the crowd, actually, and it's a great question on this particular industry about banking and cannabis. So banking, traditional finance banking, has actually excluded a lot of cannabis-based businesses from doing business with them. How have you overcome this, or how has the industry started to overcome this challenge in being able to operate a business building in cannabis, whatever part of the industry, but just building in cannabis in general?
So there's kind of two parts of the banking. It's one, it's keeping your bank license. And if you haven't had a bank license closed, then you haven't been in cannabis working long enough. Like a lot of people have gone through the problem is everybody pays cash. When you go to the cash register, you cannot use your credit card. There's machines where, there's always an ATM machine right next to the dispensary register, but you pay cash. So the delivery drivers, the dispensaries have all this cash on hand at the end of the day. I'm an ancillary company. So as a tech company, we do marketing. We've been able to work with them, but it's been a big problem for the industry. And then even for them, they have to pay their electricity bills, all these other things, and they have it in cash. So by not having the banking, it's become a big problem. I mean, it was a problem. The SAFE Act, the MORE Act are making a difference, and the hemp bill is really pushed things with e-commerce, and that's the future of it. Is it's going to be e-commerce, because right now it's still a cash industry.
It's an interesting point. And Brett, anything to add on this? I mean, from a fintech space, I mean, what have you seen from fintech companies starting to open up to really change the mindset from the traditional banks and institutions that have maybe excluded companies like those in cannabis or other industries as well? I mean, even the cryptocurrency markets, we've seen a lot of companies in blockchain and crypto also kind of been pushed away until recently, as that's become a little bit more acceptable. There's been a little bit more understanding. But what have you seen in fintech in general?
Yeah, well, I wish I could say like I saw someone that has the solution. I think it was probably 3 or 4 years ago. We actually worked with a company that was building a kind of a compliance and accounting product for the cannabis industry. And it kind of just exposed me to all the challenges in this space. I haven't followed the space very closely, but as far as I know, no one's really cracked it. It really breaks down to, because eventually you have to put the money in a federally regulated bank, and then you can't move that money across state lines. And then because, where you have 50 states that are all, kind of operate separately, it becomes a real big challenge. Unless, I think the only, David can correct me on this, but I think that, most cannabis-based companies that are like dispensaries use like community banks, and I feel like a handful of community banks that only operate in one state where it's legal have been able to kind of find workarounds. But I mean, I feel like there's still a lot of opportunity, but the biggest challenges really fall on the regulatory side, and until it becomes legal across all 50 states, I think those problems will still be there. It's not really necessarily a fintech problem. It's more of a regulatory problem, in my opinion. And once those are kind of alleviated or workarounds are created, then I feel like there's a ton of fintech solutions that can run in there and serve those customers. What kind of got me fired up and wanted me to made me want to work with this company was when she kind of explained how these people, it's legal for them to sell it, but it's not legal for them to put the money in a bank. And I felt like, it's like these people can go to jail for doing their, running their business. And I felt that it was fundamentally just not fair that someone who sells, tobacco, alcohol or groceries or whatever they're selling, doesn't have any of these challenges. So I mean, I think this is one of those areas that I really feel is not like an equal citizen in the business arena right now.
No write-offs. No tax write-offs.
No tax, right? Okay, I don't even know about that.
This is an interesting. I mean, the regulatory environment is a very, very sticky subject. But I see Jose shaking his head that this is a part of business inclusion, or exclusion, I should say, where a lot of companies are excluded due to the regulatory environment being very behind, and maybe not as educated or up to date on things as other industries as well. And Gary, a question for you: and artificial intelligence. How is AI maybe playing a role, or could play a role in helping business inclusion and really advance that, as some of these businesses have been excluded, the regulatory environments are behind? I mean, how can AI help business inclusion?
Well, because AI can look at all the data, make some decisions. Who should have what, where, and when, where the particular talents lie, how to be able to build multicultural, diverse teams. I mean, there's all kinds of different ways. I mean, how much have we really, if you look at it today, when we're building startup, how much time do we really spend doing analysis of where the best resources to be able to fill that job from a HR perspective, how to build the dream team? So it's really, we're cracking it. And the other thing is, think about this, Kyle, these impact funds that are out there that really want to support groups, diverse groups, disadvantaged groups, groups that could be brought together as one. So one of the things that I told you that we're still working on in Atlanta, we got a little pushback because of COVID, but imagine some of the top AI companies in the world to a place like Atlanta, bringing in Black entrepreneurs and disadvantaged to come in as executives to be able to understand how to be able to build the company. I mean, the first step is show people that it can be done. And of course, it's changing. But, I've had this conversation. One of the board members of the NAACP is on the board of advisors. And Lamel and I have had this conversation several times. It's about getting the word out, letting people know. And, it's like down in Nigeria, you get a unicorn, everybody starts to talk about it, or a lot of people talk about it. And there are 206 million people that are really smart and entrepreneurial. So it's a matter of leading by example. And where AI can really pick up on this is it's all about data. It's about, as I said, find the right person, the right place at the right time. And also, where's a good place to do it? How to be able to develop partnerships and relationships using, now we just do it with LinkedIn, and it's happenstance. But imagine having the capability that you've got, you're not a smart but intelligent assistant to be able to help. How does that change the game and level the playing field for all those companies out there from anywhere to anywhere? So I see it changing rapidly. And some of these new technologies, these predictive technologies, the unsupervised AI technologies are coming out. I'll be able to, I'll be our intelligent business assistant.
I love it. And thank you very much, Gary. I think there's a great opportunity there. Jose, anything else to add onto the previous points? Again, I know you are the expert when it comes to this topic. You brought it to our attention, which is fabulous. But anything else to add that the audience should know around business inclusion and where things go from here, and what they should be keeping at top of mind when building a business or a product or service?
I think the most important is if you have the will, then you can achieve it. But the majority is not persistent enough to go through all the hurdles that they're going to face. And in fact, it's not about money at the beginning. It's about knowledge and how you do things and persistency. And the problem is that most people think that as long as you get to the cash, that you can start a business and you can make it happen. But in fact, it shows that the cash is the last piece of this puzzle, and that you should never start a business before you do your homework. And homework is doing your market research, checking everything out, who is on the market, who is not on the market, will it be acceptable, do your homework. And for some reason, people either don't like it or they just want to jump this part of the process. And then obviously, it's very hard to get to an investor and telling him that you have an idea, but you have never validated it. So an investor wants to be sure that he's going to get his money back and he's going to multiply his money. And AI is also a very important piece of the puzzle, because it can ease all that work. It's quite bureaucratic building up a company still today. 75% of all your time will go to bureaucratic paperwork, or one way or the other. So if you can ease that, then you'll free a lot of time, and you can spend on business building, because that's where you need to get to. At the end, my last message would be, don't spend so much time talking. We like to talk a lot, humans, which is fine. But in essence, until you get to the execution and you don't start executing it, nothing will happen. You don't move mountains by just talking, right? You need to move it by executing and machinery to get the job done. So start building up that process and start executing what you have in your mind. That's my best advice.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jose. And where can everyone find you online to continue the conversation as well as we come to close?
So my preferred social network is LinkedIn, although we are on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter as well. So just search for Jose Graza, or just look up BizMoney, and you certainly will find us. And we are open networkers, so please get in touch. You're almost welcome.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jose. Brett, where can everyone find you to continue the conversation online as well?
Brett Noyce. I'm on LinkedIn at Brett Noyce, Twitter, and Telegram.
Wonderful. David?
David Schachter at LinkedIn would probably be the best way.
Wonderful. Thank you. Gary? Hey, Gary. Apologies.
Gary Fowler, LinkedIn. You can reach me on Twitter. Send me an email. Check out our website, gsdvs.com. I'd love to hear from you. Stay happy, stay safe, and go get them. It's about execution, as Jose said.
Absolutely. Gary, Brett, David, Jose, thank you all very much for sharing your thoughts and insights around today's topic. To our audience, make sure you reach out to all 4 of our investors today. Make sure you add context, where you heard them, where you met them, and what you would like to continue the conversation about. And as Gary and Jose mentioned, execution, execution, execution. Just try. This is no better time than now to get started, as Gary has mentioned as well previously on VCTV. And with that, we'll be back here tomorrow with more VCTV to continue the conversation around what's happening in the world of technology, innovation, along with different regions as well. So join us back here tomorrow on VCTV. Check out LATOKEN.com to hear from more from all of our speakers today and the entire VCTV family of speakers. Big thank you to the LATOKEN team and to Maria for making today's episode possible. I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott. You can find me along with all of our speakers online 24/7, 365. Everyone have a wonderful day, and we'll see you back here tomorrow on more VCTV. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.